Doki. Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm a little bit late. Before I forget, I just want to remind you that this coming Saturday, normally we'll be meeting in person at the Lakewood Public Library. However, that won't be happening this Saturday for various reasons. And also I want to remind you that we have our winter break coming up from the 15th of December through the 4th of January. So that's 3 weeks. And also that there's a food drive in Lakewood, and they're asking for volunteers on the 19th and 20th of December. So please consider that. All this information will be in the newsletter that will be coming out soon. So please consider that. Okay, all right. So apparently there are no questions. Hey, Melina. Hey, Lucy and Tess. Hi, hi. Gonna just pop out this chat. I can figure out how to do that. Second, there we go. Okay, perfect. All right. So let's begin as usual by just settling in, first of all, getting mind and body together, which is rare, unfortunately, but nonetheless, it's the best way to start any Dharma activity, really any activity, but particularly Dharma activity, so that we are showing some kind of respect to what's happening and giving our full attention to it. And that requires being somewhat stable and aware and present. So let's take just a moment to do that. Then we want to generate our bodhicitta motivation. Bodhicitta being the wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So ultimately, we try to make that our motivation for anything that we do that is positive, but especially for anything we do that is related to the Dharma, which is always positive. Although we're working on ourselves in various ways, we're working on ourselves in the way that someone who goes to med school works on themselves so they can become a surgeon, right? So we're working to develop all the qualities that are necessary to benefit the maximum amount of beings possible. So if we can think with compassion on all the suffering in this world, and out of that compassion, determine to do our very best to attain enlightenment, so we can help them relieve that suffering. And Sandasam Garabshirisam Pamakarajapani Shuna Susu Nagnatingasaso Kadalamanamasuat. Omi Chagin Pojane Dusum Senge Quinking Wine and Sanchagunas Unted Seba, so wait a minute, Shabla so well dead. Omi Chagin Pojane Dusum Senge Quinking Wine and Sanchagunas Unted Seba, so wait a minute, Shabla so. So it seems there are no questions this morning. So I will talk about refuge and bodhicitta vows then. Okay. I'll move this here. And if you have any questions during my talk, please feel free to put them in the chat. Okay. We can have a discussion. So refuge and bodhicitta vows. So refuge, typically one goes through a ceremony of taking refuge when one decides, okay, I'm going to follow this path, right? So before we decide to follow any path, no matter the path. We should make sure that it's really what we want to do. We should really examine everything about it. Does it seem authentic? Does it seem, does the teachers seem like they're correct? Do the practitioners, show at least some of the qualities that are um, uh, aspired to, let's say, or touted as something good? Um, that one's a little bit tricky because, everybody's on the path and, it can be hard to judge, but at least we can see if the path is genuine, if the teacher is genuine, if it's something that speaks to us, if it's something we really believe we want to do, then we start by taking refuge. Okay. So we have to begin by considering what is this word refuge? What does it mean, right? When we say refuge, what do we mean? When we talk about refugees, what do we mean, right? So we're taking refuge from what when we talk about a refugee coming to America, for whatever that's worth? They may be taking refuge from war in their country or, threat of death from their government because they're a political activist or this kind of thing, right? So they're taking refuge from some kind of danger. Or let's say you're hiking in the mountains and a unexpected storm comes, you might run into a cave for protection. So you're taking refuge from the storm. Yeah. So in the case of Buddhism, we're taking refuge from our own conflicting emotions and habitual patterns that have imprisoned us in suffering since beginningless time. So conflicting emotions mean our negative emotions, hatred, anger, jealousy, pride, etc. Okay, greed, mostly. And habitual patterns are, just habits that we've developed over time that keep us in cyclic existence, yeah, because we continue to create negative karma through these habits, like the habit of getting angry every time we don't get what we want, or the habit of being very jealous when someone else has what we want, this kind of thing, yeah. These are the things that keep us in this spinning prison, as Jigme Rinpoche says. Yeah. So we're taking refuge from that. In what are we taking refuge? So like I said earlier, right, if we're in the mountains and there's a sudden storm, we're taking refuge in the cave, right? Or we're taking refuge in another country. In this case, we're taking refuge in the Buddha, the three jewels, what we call the three jewels or the triple gem, which is the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So we take refuge in the Buddha as an example, right? As an example of someone who has, reached the end of this path, who has reached enlightenment, as someone we can look to and say, okay, what did he do, and how did he do it? And if I follow that example, then I can reach the same stage. But it's not only that, and maybe in a sense, more importantly, we're taking refuge in our own Buddha nature, okay? So that is, this idea that we all have this thing called Buddha nature, or, basic goodness, sometimes it's called, um, where we have all the qualities of enlightenment in us already. And it's a matter of um, kind of uncovering the obscurations to those qualities rather than, introducing something from the outside that we don't already have. Okay. So we're sort of taking refuge in the fact that we have Buddha nature or basic goodness. And this actually um, can help to give us a lot of confidence, it's there, we know it's there. And so the work of the path is accessing that and removing the veils, what they often use this term veils, right? Removing the veils to um, that knowledge or that experience of our Buddha nature. Okay. Then we take refuge in the Dharma, which is the teachings, wisdom. Okay. So taking refuge in the Dharma is something quite interesting. And some teachers say, I've heard it said, it's really that's like the most important of these three, because it's through that that we attain enlightenment. Yeah. So, but what does it mean to take refuge in the Dharma? In this, it means to take refuge in the teachings. What does that mean? So that means that we look to the teachings for the answers to our life. You know, what do I do in this situation? How do I handle um, my emotions? How do I grow in compassion and wisdom? The teachings are there that answer these kinds of questions. Yeah. So if as soon as we look to the teachings to help us with a problem or help us develop a particular quality, we're taking refuge in the teachings. Yeah. Very important. And then the third is Sangha. Okay. We take, so when we talk about taking refuge in the Sangha, we're actually talking about um, the great beings, yeah, the great Bodhisattvas who have really progressed on the path very far. All right. Um, Sometimes Sangha is used to mean ordained people. Sometimes Sangha is used to mean the spiritual community. Okay. But we're not taking refuge in ordained people. We're not taking refuge in the spiritual community. When we talk about taking refuge, we're taking refuge in these really advanced beings. And this comes from Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche himself, who has requested that we do not use the word sangha for spiritual community because it confuses. Yeah, it doesn't mean that we can't learn from spiritual community or that we shouldn't respect ordained people or our spiritual friends. For sure, there's so much to learn there, and there's so much value there. As far as spiritual community, these are people who are walking the path alongside us, right? And there's quite a lot of positive things that come with that. So, for example, there are those who have been on the path a lot longer than us. And so we can look to them for advice, or ask them questions that we don't want to ask our teacher because we know for our teacher it's kind of a waste of time, maybe. I don't know. Is how I feel anyway. Sometimes, like, I would rather just ask an older practitioner, not older in age, but someone who's been, practicing longer than me. What about this? What about that? I would ask them first sometimes before I would ask the teacher. Yeah, trusting that they know through their own experience. So it can be helpful in that sense. It can be helpful in a like lateral sense, those who are kind of on the same level as us or have the same um, you know, number of years in practice and who are, we're really just side by side. In that case, that's really helpful too, because we can commiserate, we can support each other, we can um, try to help each other, with what we know. So that's really useful as far as Sangha is concerned. And Sangha is also really useful in the difficult people that arise, right? A Sangha, a spiritual community, is, those who follow the same teacher, especially those who have received empowerments together. There's a commitment there called Damsik in Tibetan. It's called Samaya in Sanskrit. And it's kind of a sacred bond, right? Where we're tasked with being acting correctly towards them, regardless of whether we like them or not, regardless of whether we think they're good people or not, regardless of whether they get on our nerves or not, etc. Right? So those people are really helpful to us because they kind of force us to practice. Yeah, they force us to rely on the teachings. It's like a family. Like you can't choose who's in your family. You get who you get, right? And sometimes that's a good relationship. Sometimes that's a really difficult relationship, right? So it's the same in a spiritual community. So it's very good, yeah, to have this kind of community, but it's not the same as taking refuge in them. So when we take refuge in the Sangha, in the sense of really advanced practitioners, it's very similar to taking refuge in the Buddha. And that here's an example for us, of people who have made it very far, and who can maybe help us, the great bodhisattvas. Yeah. So then we talk about there's three types of motivation for taking refuge. The lesser motivation is, it says, obtaining the happiness of gods and men, fear of the lower realms. So this is probably not something that we in the West do very often. I think it's more in countries that like already have Buddhism as sort of part of their culture, um, and already accept and understand this idea of the six realms. Okay, so just to briefly explain that, there's three higher realms, there's three lower realms. The three higher realms have less suffering, the three lower realms have more suffering. And if you take refuge, you're more likely to be reborn in the three higher realms. But so this is considered a lesser motivation, because it's really just for yourself, right? Because you don't want to have a bad rebirth. So it's not really the best motivation, but better than nothing. The middling um, motivation is the wish to attain nirvana. So nirvana is um, an interesting term, and it's kind of used in various ways depending on the subject. But here, I believe they're talking more about the Hinayana path or the Theravada path, where the goal is nirvana. So nirvana, the nirvanic state, is kind of one of continual bliss, and you're not really doing anything for anybody else. Yeah, you attain a certain level. From the Vajrayana perspective, it's not full enlightenment, but you attain a certain level, and then um, you kind of check out, yeah, and you just get your rest in this state of bliss. Um, but again, like you're not doing anything for anybody else. So from the Mahayana and Vajrayana schools or vehicles, it's considered better to have the bodhisattva ideal, yeah, where you are really aiming to benefit others through your progress on the path. So then the highest motivation is that of so-called great beings. So there's a quote, and unfortunately I have not written down where this quote comes from, but the quote is, the sight of all beings plunged in the great ocean of samsara's infinite sufferings and undergoing an unimaginable variety of torments motivates us to take refuge with the idea of establishing them all in the unsurpassable and omniscient state of perfect and complete Buddhahood. So that is, again, taking refuge with essentially a bodhicitta motivation, yeah, is considered the highest form. But if we can't, like, it's important to understand that we have to know and kind of accept where we are at the moment, yeah. And maybe we're not there at that point. Maybe we just kind of want to save ourselves, and we can start there. We can start there, and then gradually move up kind of through these levels. We shouldn't feel like, well, I don't feel that way of the great beings, so I'm not even going to try. No, no, it's okay. It's just like, I often say, like, when people come to the path at all, I don't know that there's anybody, I don't know that there's a single person who comes to the path with the idea of benefiting all beings right from the start. Okay. Usually people go to a teaching or they go to a meditation to benefit themselves. Yeah. I want to be more calm, or I want to see if this Lama can drop some wisdom on me, I want to, so I can feel better, this kind of thing. And like, that's okay. That's fine. You know, it's normal. It's totally understandable. It's just over time, we want to try to sort of grow that motivation into something broader, into something that, includes more beings, yeah, not just ourselves. Okay. So the precepts of taking refuge are three things, have three categories, and uh, so three things to be abandoned. So when we take refuge in the Buddha, we're not to take refuge in worldly, quote unquote, gods. All right. So this initially spoke to, people who had maybe animistic type religions or spirituality where they might, honor a mountain spirit or a tree spirit or land spirit of some kind, and kind of take refuge in that, and they're saying like, well, if you're going to take refuge in the Buddha, you don't do that anymore. In our case, as modern Westerners, then we want to think about what are we actually taking refuge in normally? Yeah. We take refuge, and we should think about that. I would like you to take a moment to think about that. What do you take refuge in typically when you're not feeling well or when you're suffering? What do you normally take your refuge in? I'll give you a minute to think about it. Okay. So I don't know what your answers were, but we can take refuge in um, social media. We can take refuge in food. We can take refuge in television. We can take refuge in alcohol or drugs or calling our friends or, anything that we might do to escape our suffering. Yeah. So if we take refuge in the Buddha, then we need to stop doing that type of refuge, yeah, and look to the Buddha and also, of course, the Dharma and the Sangha to look at what kind of refuge should I actually take in this situation? Is my method of refuge really helping me, or is it just postponing the problem, right? Where we're just kind of ignoring it and numbing ourselves out from it rather than actually dealing with it and trying to grow and progress on the path. Okay? So we want to abandon these kind of worldly gods. When we take refuge in the Dharma, we abandon harming others, even in dreams, and we should make a vigorous effort to protect others. So that means human, in our case, right, humans and animals, that we should not harm them, that we should do our best to protect them. And, one of the best ways that we can do that is to avoid eating them and eating animal products because that, like eggs and dairy and cheese and things like that, because that contributes directly to the harm of countless animals, to the harm of the planet, to the harm of the workers in slaughterhouses and meat processing plants, etc. It's so much harm involved in that. So if we just stop doing that, we're going such a long way in not harming others. And of course, we do our best not to harm people either, which isn't always easy. In situations where we feel unjustly accused or harmed by them or this kind of thing, it can be quite a challenge not to at least want to harm them in return. When we take refuge in the Sangha, we uh, avoid or abandon getting involved with those who denigrate the teachings or the teacher. So it can happen that, we start to follow a particular teacher, let's say, that we really trust, and then we meet with people who, um, think that Buddhism is ridiculous and why are you doing this? And like, who is this guy anyway? And start to talk badly about the path and about the teacher. And we just want to avoid those people, especially at the beginning, right? Because it can be a little hard, especially in our society where this whole thing is really not understood at all. Um, it can be a little hard then to not be influenced by these people who don't know the teachings and don't know the teacher, but are making a lot of assumptions, right? So we want to try to avoid that. Once we get really more confident in both the teacher and the teachings, then it doesn't matter so much, because we know in our heart, that this is the right thing, and we're not worried about what other people say. So those are the three things to be abandoned. Then the three things to be done when we take refuge in the Buddha: we should honor and respect anything representing him, even a tiny piece of a statue, etc. So if we have, uh, you know, we have like a Buddha statue and it falls on the ground and breaks, then we don't just sweep it up and put it in the garbage. Yeah, we need to. Um, I don't actually know what we're supposed to do. I have the same problem. Normally, I just would put it away, and I don't know. We can. I got stuck there. I don't know. Um, but we don't throw it away. We don't step on it. When we have a Buddha statue, we don't put it on the ground. This kind of thing. I remember Taklama Rinpoche was here one year, and we went to this retreat place in central Ohio, and they had a Buddha statue, a stone Buddha statue in their garden, and he was like shaking his head. Just feel like, why does everybody put these Buddha statues on the ground outside? Just crazy, and it's right, kind of not really respectful. Anyway, yeah, so anything representing him, whether it's like statue or painting or, this kind of thing, we want to treat it with respect. For the Dharma, if we take refuge in the Dharma, then we should respect any text or even a piece of the text. So in this case, it means like, especially Dharma books, we never walk over them. We don't put them next to us on our bed or on our chair or something, so it's at the same level as our butt, right? We never put them on the floor. Um, so if we have them at home, they're on the top shelf, or there's only other Dharma books above them. So let's say you have two shelves of Dharma books. It's your first top and second topmost shelf, and then you have your non-Dharma books below that. We don't place other things on top of the Dharma books, like a pair of glasses or a pen or your iPod, these things or whatever, right? It's considered disrespectful. And then for the Sangha, anything that symbolizes it, any red or yellow cloth, the jewel of the Sangha. So here they are talking about ordained people who wear red and yellow typically. So if we see that, then we treat that with respect. If it's something that's ripped up or destroyed somehow, then we would want to burn that. Um, Otherwise, if it's, robes or something like that, then we want to keep it separate. We want to again keep it in a higher place, treat it with respect. Then there are the three supplementary precepts, which are to see the teacher's body, speech, and mind as the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and to see your Vajra's siblings as the jewel of the Sangha. So again, we kind of, I'm kind of going back and forth here with this understanding of Sangha, but I think that what that means here is that we should treat them with respect, because of this samsik or samaya that we have with them. because they are also students of our teacher and in a sense an extension of our teacher, I guess, in that way, or at least relation to our teacher. So we want to do our best to treat them with respect, to not gossip about them, to not put them down, to not fight with them, etc. Yeah. And there should be a third one here, but there is not a third one here. So we'll go on to the next point, which is just whenever we encounter any kind of difficulties, we rely on the three tools, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Okay. So the benefits of taking refuge are we plant the seed of liberation in ourselves. Okay. We distance ourselves from negative acts and do more positive acts. And refuge is the support for all the vows and the source of all good qualities, it says in the teachings. So if we want to take any other kind of vow, a bodhicitta vow, or monastic vows, or vows that come when we take an empowerment or to get an empowerment, all of that we have to have first taken refuge. Yeah. So it's the basis, it's the foundation for all the other vows. What if we have put our books on the ground? Is there a practice we can do to energetically undo that? Um, I mean, it's not considered like a major deal, especially if we didn't know about this to begin with. But usually, what happens if, like, let's say that, I have this text and I accidentally drop it on the ground, then usually what people do is they just pick it up and put it on their head and then they place it in the right spot. So you could do that. Um, but otherwise, it's not considered like a huge, huge deal. Yeah. Um, we just stopped doing it if we didn't know before. I remember when I first um, got into Buddhism was in 1988, I guess, and I met this guy in Thailand who later became my boyfriend for a couple of years, and he was so sweet, and he, really took this seriously about respecting the text and not putting things on top of the text. And I was not, because he was practicing Vajrayana Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism, and I was doing Theravada Buddhism, which is what they practice in Thailand, and that's where we met. And I don't know why I don't know why I was like this, but it just kind of got on my nerves, I guess. So we just purposely put things on top of his books. And he was so patient, so kind, and he would just very gently, pick it up and put it somewhere else. Like that. And eventually I became just embarrassed, I guess, of my own stupid behavior. So I stopped doing it. When I teach yoga, I like to have books near me to reference. Could I place them on the blanket near my mat instead? Yes, I think if you have like folded up the blanket so it's a little bit higher than your butt, that would be great. Or if you could take one of those blocks that you use, if you have those for yoga, you could put it on that. That would be great. Thanks for your questions. Um, so anyway, um, so then taking refuge plants the seed of liberation, distances one from negative acts to do more positive acts. Support is the support for all vows and source of all good qualities, and ultimately leads to a state of Buddhahood. In the Immaculate Sutra, it says, quote, if all the merit of taking refuge were to take physical form, the whole of space entirely filled would not be enough to contain it. So refuge is quite important. Great idea, and thank you for sharing that story. You're welcome. Even though it's very embarrassing for me, and it's a little funny. And it really shows well for him, how nice he was about it, how patient he was. So then we move on to the bodhicitta vow. Okay. So the bodhicitta, as I said at the beginning, is the wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. So the bodhicitta vow is another vow that we take formally um, with the Lama. So oftentimes refuge and bodhicitta are given at the same time. But if you feel like you're ready to take refuge, but you're not ready to take bodhicitta, then wait. You can take the refuge vow and not take the bodhicitta vow. That's what I did at the beginning because I was like, oh, I don't know about coming back and helping all these beings. It just seems like too much for me. I'm not ready to commit to that. So I didn't take it. I took a refuge only at the beginning, and eventually I took bodhicitta as well. So the vow itself is the vow to continue to return to cyclic existence until all beings have attained Buddhahood. So that's the vow in essence. Yeah. Just I vow to continue to return to this mess so I can help others to be free. Until until everyone is free, I'm going to keep coming back. That's the vow, essentially. Okay. So that's it for my little talk. So let's do some meditation. We're just going to do mindfulness of breathing practice today. And I'm sure everybody here is probably already familiar with it, but just in case um, somebody comes along later who doesn't know, I'm going to explain it. So the first thing you want to do is to take the posture. Okay. So if you're sitting on the floor or you're sitting on your bed, you just want to cross your legs in whatever way is comfortable for you. Um, if you're sitting on a chair, you want your feet flat on the floor in front of you. All the other instructions are the same. So your hands can be in one of three positions, palms down on your knees, or your legs palms up like that, one on top of the other, resting in your lap, or with your fingers on top of each other and your thumbs touching like you're holding a goose egg, yeah? Whatever is most comfortable for you. Arms are relaxed, so you're not holding them out, you're not squeezing in, they're relaxed by your side. The back is straight, which is really the most important thing. So that means the back of your neck is also straight, so your chin's going to be tucked in just a little bit. So do you see the difference? Like I can say my back is straight, but my chin is up a little bit, which is bending the back of my neck. So I want to straighten that out. Yeah. Mouth is closed but relaxed. Um, oh yeah, your shoulders should be back a little bit. So normally I just kind of roll my shoulders back one time, and you can feel right away there's an opening in the chest. Opens up the chest rather. Mouth is closed but relaxed, tongue resting on the roof of the mouth, breathing through the nose. The eyes are looking downward. They're open, sort of half open, with a um, just a relaxed lowered gaze. So that's the posture. And this posture is the way it is because it supports the mind in meditation. So then what's the meditation? What we want to do is just bring awareness to the sensation of the breath coming in and out of the nose. So it's going to focus at this sort of the end of your nose and just take a moment to notice that sensation before I continue. Okay. So that sensation is going to be the focus of our attention. But we have to be careful that we're not tense about it, that we're not grasping this sensation, that we're just with a light touch, we're aware of it. Okay. And we're trying to maintain continuous awareness, continuous awareness of it without distraction. However, most likely we're going to get distracted, and that's fine. Okay. That's why it's called practice. If we could do it without distraction right off the bat, we wouldn't need to practice, right? So we want to try to maintain that. And while we're doing that, we're not trying to stop thinking. Okay. It's really important. We're not trying to stop thinking. We're just letting the thoughts arise, dwell, and disappear on their own, which they will do if we don't interfere. What we want to avoid is running after them, chasing after them, creating a big storyline, and all this stuff. Just let it be. And they will come and go on their own like clouds through the sky. Okay. If and when we find ourselves distracted and we've sort of just lost it, lost our awareness of the breath, no big deal. Okay. That's no big deal at all. In fact, that's a victory. Noticing that we got distracted, like, is the point. So we realize we got distracted, bring the mind back. So it's not just, the point is not just realizing that we got distracted, but realizing that we've got distracted and bringing the mind back to a state of awareness. Yeah. So no matter how many times we have to do that, it's good. It's fine. It's what this practice is. Okay. So let's start there. We have the posture. Pardon me. We bring our awareness to the breath and we begin. So now we want to begin to count the breaths, counting either every inhalation or every exhalation to a total of 10 complete breaths. Um, Counting helps us to realize more quickly if we've gotten distracted because we will have realized we lost count. So if that happens again, no big deal. Just bring the mind back, start again at 1. If we get to 10 without losing count, don't let that distract you. Just go back to 1, start again. So please begin that now. we can end the meditation here, and then we will say the closing prayers. You can join or not as you wish. I would check out all the information in the description box below, and you can see, you can download the questionnaire, you can see about our website, you can sign up for the newsletter, which I highly recommend, as that's the best and quickest way of knowing what's going on with us. And I will make some announcements after the prayer, so please stick around for those. So we begin with the long life prayers for the Dalai Lama and our teachers. These we say just in Tibetan. You can just read in English if you prefer, but I'm going to say them in Tibetan. Kanri wa wei ko wei shinkan su pendan de wa malu juene. Chene si won tenzin yam su ye. Shape kya ka pa tu tank yo shi. Om swasti jigme kempe kalo yam paru. Kagap se chen se se bundawa. Ider den sanam ke no bucho. Se chen yang we shakin tatsu so. Om swasti se la ken so chin tin june. Senda se kyoto pema wang samsu na dre kyopo ta tenne. Nakchen ten de shetan tage sho. Nama gungam sampo soa de. Chodo gu se ringwa soa de. Trine tashingi ba soa de. Lama dandre wa me pa chingi lo. Then for the next page, this one, we say once in English, once in Tibetan, the remaining three just in English, and then we say this mantra. By this merit, may all attain omniscience, may defeat the enemy of wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of cyclic existence, may I free all beings. Sonandi tamche sipani, done nebe drum pamche shing, kegana chi balon chupai, sibe sole drawa shong. May Bodhicitta, precious and sublime, arise where it has not yet come to be, and where it has risen, may it never fail, but grow and flourish ever more and more. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may it too remain and dispel the miseries of the world, ever absorbed in the display of divine forms and primordial awareness, appearance, sound, and perception in the state of divinities, mantras, and dharmakaya. May I, inseparable from the practice of the profound and secret great yoga, attain within the essence of mind the state of oneness. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Raja Sattva Tenopa Tishta Trito Me Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Soasiti Me Prayasa Sawakama Sutsane Shitam Shriyam Kuru Aham Aham Bhagavan Sawatathagata Vajrayana Matsa Patri Pawamaha Samaya Sattva Bhavan. Okay, so first I want to say thank you so much for joining me this morning, and thank you for watching the video for anyone who has come later. You can find a lot of information in the description box below, as I said, newsletter, our website, downloading various things. It's a really beautiful bluebird that just landed with like an orange uh, neck. Really pretty. As I said at the beginning, I just want to repeat that for in case someone was not here at the beginning. This Saturday, we would normally have meditation in person at the Lakewood Library, but for various reasons, we won't be doing that today on this coming Saturday, but we will be here on YouTube. We're coming up on our winter break, which is 2 weeks, I think, maybe 3 weeks. Hold on, sorry, pulling up the calendar again. 3 weeks. So beginning the December 15th through January 4th, and then we start our regular programming. During that time, we will not have any meditation. I haven't decided about Buddha days yet, but there will be some Buddha days during that time that we might be gathering for. I'll let you know when the newsletter comes out. Um, mm, 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 yeah, if you could please like the video, comment on the video, share the video, subscribe, all that stuff. It really does help to bring more attention to these videos and help people to access the precious Dharma for their benefit. What else? Yes, and also if you're able to make some donations, that would really help. We offer this meditations almost every single week for the year, and it's free, along with the Buddhist days are free. Other ceremonial days we have are free. So there's a lot that we're giving to the community that we ask no money for, but we do need money to run what we're running here. We need money for, Zoom, we pay for that, website, we pay for that, various, other things associated with the website, we pay for that. We have an accountant, we pay for that, et cetera, et cetera. So there are still a lot of expenses that we just would so appreciate you donating to help us so we can continue doing this work. Apologize for my voice. I'm still a little sick. I apologize for that. And that's it. So thank you so much. And I will see you next Saturday. Have a great week. And that's it. Okay. Bye. Bye, everybody. Kisses.